I've just come across this brilliant article which helps demystify engine accuracy versus engine correlation. This was a big subject of discussion following the recent Yosha analysis, and the really juicy part about this video is that this article was then responded to by Yosha on Twitter. So that's where I came across this article. It was this guy, Nate Solon, who published it. So if I jump to his Twitter here, you can see he's a chess master, data scientist, and he mentions the real game isn't on the board, it's in your head. And he also writes a weekly newsletter here for the Zwischenzug Substack.com. So, okay, if I come over here, this is where I clicked on the article. It comes into here. So he published this about 11 hours ago, just very, very recently. Now it's a long article. I don't want to read the whole thing. I just want to pick out some sections here. So he talks about the fact that this Yosha analysis came out last week. I'm not going to go in on all of that because I'll link the video down below. You can check it out yourself afterwards if you wish to. But in that analysis, it showed that Hans Niemann had an unusual number of games in the 90s or even at 100% engine game correlation. Now he talks here about saying, okay, so there's an obvious question. What does this score mean? How is it calculated? 100% of what? Your first thought might be that engine correlation is the same thing as engine accuracy. If you've ever analysed one of your games on Lichess or chess.com, you're familiar with accuracy. It's a 0 to 100 score that represents how close you came to the best moves according to the engine. Now, as it turns out, engine correlation is not the same as accuracy. Here's a Lichess study that he links. I'll link this article below. The games all have high scores, mostly in the 90s, but not 100. So already things are looking a lot less suspicious. A good player can play with accuracy in the 90s, especially if your opponent does not play well. Additionally, according to Stockfish 15, the engine Lichess uses for analysis, these games contain inaccuracies and even outright mistakes by Hans. So how does a game with a mistake get to 100% score on engine correlation? So in the past few days, more people have looked into it. The details have been mostly figured out, and basically it goes like this. Users upload their engine analysis. Other users can access that analysis. For each move, if it matches the top move of any engine that's been uploaded, it counts as a hit. Otherwise, it counts as a miss. The engine correlation is the percentage of total moves that are hits. Now, he mentions here the motivation of this feature is so that you get lots of analysis uploaded. It stops people using computing power all the time to analyze the same positions. But it does mention that it shouldn't be used for cheating. You know, this is what it says on the Let's Check cheat detection tool. And then he also says here it's possible to manipulate the scores because ChessBase don't vet that analysis. And so if you look at Niemann's 100% games, this appears to be exactly what happened. Some of the moves only match with old or unusual engines, and many of those were uploaded by the same ChessBase user, Gambitman, the guy who did the analysis on YouTube. You can see here, Rook F to B1 by Stockfish7. So he talks about here that some of the engines used were very old, so suggesting old engine lines. Now, it's true that a clever cheater could use an older engine to avoid detection, but it's also true that the more engines you try, the more likely you are to find one that matches a certain move. So these are some of the challenges that I was trying to articulate the other day. You just put into this article here. He really summarizes it perfect for me. And then if you come down here and he talks about his analysis now, he did some analysis of Carlsen's games and Nepo's and Niemann, Erigassi and Gukesh. And then he did some comparison on stuff they've done in the last couple years, but he did it based on center pawn loss, which is basically saying, okay, I focus on move quality rather than engine correlation, given that the engines are the authorities on good moves. This is a subtle distinction, but it's an important one. Engine correlation is an all or nothing metric. If the player's move doesn't match the top choice of the engine, then it doesn't matter whether the move was a minute inaccuracy or a gross blunder, it gets no credit either way. This makes the analysis extremely sensitive to the choice of the engine and the exact parameters the engine is run with. The ability to upload multiple engines mitigates this somewhat, but as we've seen, that process is haphazard and ripe for manipulation. A better approach is to focus on the move quality by looking at center pawn loss, which measures how much worse the player's move were than the engine's top choice. So what were his findings? Well, he found that in the results, Niemann's average centre pawn loss was completely normal. It was actually the worst of Carlsen, Erigaisi, Nepomniachtchi and Gukesh. So nothing unusual there in what this guy found in his analysis here. He did say it's very possible that a finer grained analysis would turn up evidence of cheating, because he does say this doesn't prove that Niemann didn't cheat. No, it just shows that the analysis currently being used to implicate him doesn't hold up. Now, yeah, he goes on to say there's some different bits going on here. The thing that struck him is Niemann's aggression in games. He doesn't like to avoid risks like other grandmasters. He is quite a risky player, seems more willing to take the game into murky territory, especially sacrifice material, maybe because he feels confident doing so because he's got engine assistance, or maybe he's just an unusually aggressive, intuitive player. It would be a shame to derail the career of an exciting player because his style doesn't line up with what's currently popular. So how did Joscha respond to this? Well, if I go back to this starting tweet here, we can see some responses from people. And then when we get down to here, we can see Joscha saying, my thread in answer to Nate's article. She linked to here. I click that one. You then get to here. People be like, Joscha told us that Gambit Man had 100% correlation when he checked in 2020, a 2020 Stockfish versus Leela game, but I checked with Stockfish 15 and the correlation was lower. Only one explanation, they wanted us to falsely believe that Stockfish played like an engine. So she's saying people should read this article, it's well written and honest, but they should know it's based on many misconceptions and misunderstandings. First, let me remind you that I gave in this video's description the links to every piece of data I presented. Then she says, so when I see a Redditor presenting themselves like a great detective for having discovered that Gambit Man's engine was used in his Let's Check analysis, I'm like, no shit Sherlock, maybe you could have just watched the video. Centre pawns are an obsolete evaluation. This is interesting. I might write about it when I have some time, but everyone competent who has given some thoughts about it knows about it. Average centre pawn loss is the most known anti-cheating tool since the 90s. No smart cheater would ever be detected by it. Better than simply average centre pawn loss, but also well known, so not very useful against a smart cheater, is the PGN SPY analysis, which includes average centre pawn loss and much more. I presented Gambit Man's PGN SPY analysis for every 2700 plus player between these years and talked about hands. And as always, I put a link in the description. Finally, Gambit Man is known and well respected in the community. Just like Google him and you'll see he's not a Magnus fan who created a pseudonym 2 weeks ago. So okay, she sort of comes back on some of it, not all of it, but certainly she's not swayed by that article too much, it would seem. Anyway, for me, this was a fantastic article. It really kind of articulated what I was trying to say in my shocking flaw video. Some of the doubts and reservations I have about using this approach of engine game correlation to try and pin someone down as a cheater. We have to tread very carefully with this stuff. Do let me know your thoughts down below, and Hans is back in action tomorrow in the US Championships, so I'll be bringing you those games and look forward to seeing you. Thanks for watching and see you soon.